Morning and welcome to the July 21st Victim Compensation Board meeting. For those of you in the room that are appearing on a specific agenda item or wish to offer public comment, the microphones at the podium and tables are directional and require that you hold fairly close to your mouth when speaking to ensure that your testimony is captured by our audio equipment. And for members and participants who are appearing via Zoom, if you cannot hear the presenter, please use the comment feature to note that as staff are monitoring the comments in real time. Council, would you please call the roll?
Member Becton.
Present.
Member Silva.
Present.
Chair Ravel.
Present.
Item 1 is the approval of the minutes for the May 19, 2022 board meeting.
Is there any discussion, additions, or corrections to the minutes from board members?
No.
Do I have a motion to approve item 1?
I move approval of the May 19th minutes.
I'd second that motion.
Is there any public comment on this item?
Seeing none, Council, will you please call the roll?
The motion before the board is the approval of the May 19th, 2022 board meeting minutes. Member Becton.
Aye.
Member Silva.
Aye.
Chair Ravel.
Aye.
Motion passes.
The next item is public comment. This is the opportunity for the public to comment on items that are not on the agenda. As any items discussed during public comment have not been agendized, the board is not permitted to take any action on these matters at this meeting. Please note, if you wish to offer public comment regarding item 6, the proposal to amend Trauma Recovery Center grant awards, or any of the PC 4900 cases, there will be a separate call for public comment when each item is heard by the board. For those on the phone, if you previously indicated your desire to offer comments during this meeting, we will be calling on you by name or phone number. For those participating via Zoom, please raise your hand if you wish to offer comment, and we will acknowledge you and let you know when it is your turn to speak.
We have no public comment.
No.
So we can move to item 3.
Item 3 is the executive officer statement, which will be presented by Executive Officer Linda Gledhill.
Good morning. At the last board meeting, I gave you a summary of what the governor had proposed in the May revision of the 2022-23 state budget. It included significant additional funding for Cal VCB in many key areas, and I'm happy to report that nearly all of those proposals made their way into the final budget, which was passed and signed into law, taking effect on July 1st. First and foremost, the budget increases benefit caps for 3 key expenses for the first time in 20 years. These expenses for funeral and burial increased from $7,500 to $12,818. The relocation fee cap increased from $2,000 to $3,418. And crime scene cleanup increased from $1,000 to $1,709. These higher limits applied to any new applications we received on or after July 1st. We proposed these increases because they were long overdue, and their inclusion in the budget is great news for victims and certainly will help during these inflationary times. In addition, the budget provides $23 million for funding in trauma recovery centers. This breaks down to $6.62 million to boost funding for the current trauma recovery centers, $6.67 million in additional money for grant awards over the next 3 years, and $5 million to establish a regional TRC pilot program, setting up satellite TRC offices in rural or underserved communities in the Central Valley and Northern California. There's also $2.16 million for the 18 existing TRCs to provide flexible emergency cash assistance for victims for costs such as transportation, childcare, food, emergency shelter, or other urgent expenses. $1.39 million for a 3-year contract with the University of California Trauma Recovery Center Technical Assistance Program for technical assistance and training for Cal VCB and TRCs. And in addition, 1.1 million for extra staffing for CalVCB to manage this increased workload. You'll hear more about these TRC proposals later in the meeting. The budget also allocates $3 million from the State Restitution Fund to allow CalVCB to conduct a media and outreach campaign. We're very excited about this opportunity to build awareness about our program and its benefits. This will fund a strategic 3-year campaign to target underserved populations and connect victims with the compensations and services they need. We believe this campaign will help us overcome traditional barriers that exist to accessing CalVCB, and in addition, those additional barriers created by the pandemic. We aim to build a solid foundation for outreach that we can expand upon once the campaign concludes. We will hire a vendor to create and execute this campaign, and you'll hear more about it as we move through the process. Finally, the budget also included money to bolster CalVCB's information technology security infrastructure and to hire additional attorneys to handle the increase in erroneous conviction claims by the passage of SB 446. Aside from providing additional funding for CalVCB, the budget makes an important change in how we pay the people that you, the board, deem to have been erroneously convicted. As you know, the process has been for the board to make a recommendation to the legislature on each approved PC 4900 claim. The legislature then in turn votes on the legislation to pay the claim, and the check is sent to the claimant if and when the legislation is passed and signed. These claims are almost always approved, but the process can take many months, especially when the legislature is not in session. AB 200, one of the budget trailer bills, revised statute to direct us to make the payment for an approved PC 4900 claim immediately after the board approves the claim. The budget also allows $7 million for CalVCB for these payments, with the provision to increase this amount upon order of the Department of Finance by the amount of any total unpaid claims. Under AB 200, CalVCB will provide an annual summary of approved claims to the legislature. Also, AB 200 confirmed that CalVCB remains immune from damages for any decisions rendered on a PC 4900 claim. This change will allow these individuals to receive their compensation more quickly. It was a change we sought as a way to improve our processes, and I'm pleased that it was part of the final budget. On a related matter, I'd like to give you an update on the proposed regulations governing PC 4900 claims. Earlier this year, CalVCB officially commenced the rulemaking process to revise and amend its regulations covering PC 4900 claims in Section 640 and 646, Title II of the California Code of Regulations. On April 1st, the proposed regulations and related documents were submitted to OAL, Office of Administrative Law, and published on CalVCB's website. These documents include a revised form to submit PC 4900 claims to CalVCB. After the initial 40-day public comment concluded, CalVCB determined that modifications were needed, and they were posted on our website on June 2nd. Following a 15-day public comment, CalVCB was in the process of finalizing the proposed regulations for board approval when AB 200 became law. And after careful consideration, we determined that additional modifications were needed to the regulations and claim form as a result of AB 200 in order to replace references for recommendation with instead approval of a claim. CalVCB posted the second round of modifications on our website on July 20th, and the 15-day public comment period expires on August 4th. To date, no public hearing has been scheduled and none has been requested. We hope to have a final version of the regulations ready to present for the board's approval at the September board meeting. Moving on from the budget, I'd like to mention that I attended the national conference of the National Association of Crime Victim Compensation Boards in June in Alexandria, Virginia. This was the first conference held in person in 3 years, and thus my first conference as the executive officer of CalVCB. It was exciting to finally have a chance to meet and talk in person with many of my colleagues from around the country. They are grappling with many of the same issues we are: decreases in restitution, questions about eligibility, and how to reach more victims. It's also powerful to hear from my colleagues in New York and Texas so soon after large mass violence events in their states. As part of this conference, I was also elected to the board of the organization. Because California is the largest program in the country, it's important that we are actively engaged and participate in these national discussions. For example, right now, the Federal Office of Victims of Crime at the U.S. Department of Justice is considering updating the federal rules surrounding compensation, and we are monitoring these discussions very closely. Internally, we continue our efforts to move to a new permanent way of working. We're transitioning to at-home COVID testing after successfully administrating testing in the office for the past 6 months. We also had our telework agreement approved by the union partners and Department of General Services. We'll be rolling out the new statewide telework form to our employees next month. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Officer Gledhill. That's terrific about all those items for the budget. Going to be really helpful for crime victims and claimants. And I think that's just a wonderful thing. So thank you and staff for your effort in bringing that about. Congratulations on your selection to the board of the National Organization. Are there any questions or comments from board members on this item?
Seeing none, we'll move to item 4, which is the legislative update, which will be presented by Deputy Executive Officer Andrew Lamar.
Good morning. I want to make sure that this is close enough so you can hear me. The legislature is currently on summer recess and will be returning on August 1st for the final month of the legislative session. Big news, of course, is what was in the 2022-23 state budget for Cal VCB, which was signed into law on June 30th and Linda already covered. Here's a rundown of other legislation we're following. SB 877 by Senator Eggman, which would authorize Cal VCB to reimburse mental health providers who are licensed in states outside of California, is currently on suspense file in the Assembly Appropriations Committee. The suspense file will be heard by August 12th, when bills will either pass off the file and move to the floor or be held in committee. SB 1468 by Senator Glazer, which is related to findings of factual innocence, is scheduled to be heard in the Assembly Appropriations Committee on August 3rd, where it will be a candidate to be placed on suspense file. SB 993 by Senator Skinner, which would make many significant changes to Cal VCB, is also currently in the Assembly Appropriations Committee. However, the 2022-23 budget stated the intent of the legislature to reconsider the changes proposed by this bill for potential inclusion in the 2024-25 budget, pending a determination in the spring of 2024 that general fund money is available to support such changes. In other words, this bill has been put on hold and is not moving forward. Additionally, SB 632 by Senator Portantino, which would appropriate $4.5 million from the general fund to pay 5 erroneous conviction claims approved by the board through March, was signed by the governor this week. 3 additional claims were approved by the board in the May hearing. These claims could not be included in SB 632 and were approved before the board was authorized to approve payment directly. Upon the legislature's return, the appropriation to pay these claims will be amended into an existing bill to allow the passage before the end of this session. Those are the highlights, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Deputy Lamar. Are there any questions or comments on this item from the board?
Thank you. I'll be presenting the contract report today, and before you today, we are requesting approval of 2 contracts related to the forced or involuntary sterilization program. As part of the statute, the Department of State Hospitals and the Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation must, in consultation with stakeholders, establish markers or plats at designated sites that acknowledge the wrongful sterilization of thousands of vulnerable people. These contracts up for your approval today and at that part of the statute. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Is there any discussion or questions from the board on this item? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve item 5?
I'd move, I'd move to approve the executive, officer's execution of items 1 and 2 of the contract report.
I second.
Is there any public comment on this item?
Seeing none, council, would you please call the roll?
The motion before the board is approval of the executive officer's execution of items 1 and 2 of the contract report, specifically the contract with the Department of State Hospitals in the amount of $450,000, and the contract with the Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation in the amount of $500,000. Member Becton,
Aye.
Member Silva,
Aye.
Chair Ravel,
Aye.
motion passes.
Item 6 is the proposal to amend Trauma Recovery Center grant awards, which will be presented by Deputy Executive Officer Andrew Lamar.
Good morning. Sorry about that. I'm here to present item 6. As you've heard, the state budget has provided $23 million in additional funding for trauma recovery centers. This is welcome news that will allow TRCs to serve more victims of crime across California. The Trauma Recovery Center is an organization that helps victims of violent crime by providing trauma-informed services that include assertive outreach to underserved populations, comprehensive evidence-based mental health services, and coordinated care tailored to each victim's needs. CalVCB presently funds 18 TRCs through grants. The 2022-23 budget provided funding to do the following: increase support for lower funded TRCs, add funding for future TRC grants, establish a regional TRC pilot program aimed at rural and underserved communities, provide flexible cash assistance for TRC clients, and execute a contract with the University of California Trauma Recovery Center Technical Assistance Program for technical assistance and training for TRCs and CalVCB. This item asks for 2 board actions. 1, to approve amended grant agreements with 11 TRCs to increase their funding as directed by the state budget. 2, to authorize Executive Officer Linda Gledhill to sign a contract with the UCTRC Technical Assistance Program as directed by the state budget. The amounts for the amended TRC contracts are listed in your agenda item. The total amount of increased funding for them is $6.62 million. The contract with the Technical Assistance Program is currently being developed by staff. The budget provides $1.39 million to execute a 3-year contract. This will be a deliverables-based contract that will include providing training to staff in all TRCs, assisting new TRCs, and studying and identifying the need for TRC services throughout the state and how to best meet it. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Deputy Lamar. That's really terrific news that these centers are going to be able to do more for crime victims because of the budget actions. Is there any discussion from board members about the proposal to increase the Trauma Recovery Center grant awards? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve the TRC portion of item 6?
I move that we approve the TRC portion of item number 6.
I'd second that motion.
Is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none.
Council, would you please call the roll?
Motion before the board is approval of the Trauma Recovery Center grant awards as recommended by staff. Excuse me, the amended Trauma Recovery Center grant awards. Member Becton,
Aye.
Member Silva,
Aye.
Chair Ravel,
Aye.
motion passes.
Do I have a motion to approve the technical assistance portion of item 6?
I would move to approve the executive officer's execution of the contract with the University of California Trauma Recovery Center.
Second.
Is there any public comment on this item?
Seeing none, Council, would you please call the roll?
The motion before the board is approval of the executive officer's execution of the contract with the University of California Trauma Recovery Center Technical Assistance Program in the amount of $1,390,000. Member Becton,
Aye.
Member Silva,
Aye.
Chair Ravel.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Item 7 is the Penal Code Section 4900 claim of Edward Easley, which will be presented by Chief Counsel Kim Gutierrez.
Good morning, members. Edward Easley filed an application as an erroneously convicted felon pursuant to Penal Code Section 4900 with Cal VCB on March 2nd of 2022. That application was based on his 1993 convictions for lewdly touching a child, which were vacated and dismissed by the Shasta County Superior Court in August of 2017. As there was no objection filed by the Office of the Attorney General, compensation for this claim is automatic under Penal Code Section 4900B, and the proposed decision recommends compensation in the amount of $263,620, which represents $140 per day for the 1,883 days Mr. Easley was wrongfully imprisoned. Mr. Easley, throughout these proceedings, has been represented by Supervising Attorney Paige Caneb of the Northern California Innocence Project. The Office of the Attorney General is represented by Deputy Attorney General Jessica Leal. One note of clarification, if you would. The proposed decision on the last page recommends that if the decision is adopted by the board, that the legislature appropriate the money for payment of this claim. This proposed decision was drafted and submitted prior to the new legislation that took effect, giving Cal VCB the authority to directly pay PC 4900 claims. Therefore, I request that you adopt the decision with the slight amendment that Cal VCB pay the claim directly, assuming that appropriate funds are available and have been provided by the legislature.
Thank you, counsel. We will hear first from counsel for Mr. Easley.
Good morning. My name is Linda Starr. I'm the director of the Northern California Innocence Project, and it's my privilege to represent Mr. Easley. Closer. Sorry. Since we've been working on his case for many years, it's been a long journey for him to get justice. We've been representing him almost as long as we've existed, which is 21 years. It's taken changes in 3 separate laws to get him to here today, and it took the great courage of a young woman who persisted in telling the truth, risked the wrath of her family, and incurred the scorn and belittlement of law enforcement, but persisted. Through it all, Mr. Easley has remained humble and intent only on establishing his innocence and having it be publicly recognized. So this is huge for him today. Compensation will be of great assistance to him as he lives and works on a chicken farm in Cottonwood. And we thank you and hope that you will approve this compensation. I also just want to say we too are thrilled that you are now able to directly compensate and it does not have to go through the legislature. Thank you.
Thank you, counsel. Would Mr. Easley like to address the board? Thank you. We will hear now from Ms. Leal of the Attorney General's office.
Good morning. I have nothing to say but to agree that compensation should be granted in this case. Thank you.
Thank you, counsel. And I want to thank all the counsel for their efforts in this case. Is there any discussion on this item by the board? Seeing none, do I have a motion on item 7?
I would move to adopt the hearing officer's proposed decision in the Penal Code Section 4900 matter of Edward Easley with the amendments as noted.
Second.
Is there any public comment on this item? None.
Counsel, would you please call the roll?
The motion for consideration is the adoption of the hearing officer's proposed decision in the Penal Code Section 4900 matter of Edward Easley with the amendments as noted in accordance with the recent statutory changes to Penal Code Section 4904 under Assembly Bill 200. Approval of the payment of the claim by Cal VCB if sufficient funds for such payment have been appropriated by the legislature. Member Becton,
Aye.
Member Silva,
Aye.
Chair Ravel.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Item 8 is the Penal Code Section 4900 claim of Lamont Tarkenton, which will be presented by Chief Counsel Kim Gutierrez.
On September 27th of 2018, Lamont Tarkenton submitted an application for compensation as an erroneously convicted person pursuant to Penal Code Section 4900. The application was based upon Mr. Tarkenton's 2007 convictions for 5 counts of second-degree robbery and 1 count of second-degree commercial burglary, which were vacated on state habeas for ineffective assistance of counsel. The Los Angeles District Attorney's Office elected to retry Mr. Tarkenton, but the case was dismissed pursuant to Penal Code Section 1382 after the prosecution announced it was unable to proceed. Mr. Tarkenton seeks compensation for 4,556 days of imprisonment in the amount of $637,840. While this claim was under consideration by Cal VCB, the legislature passed Senate Bill 446. Senate Bill 446 included the addition of Subdivision B to Penal Code Section 4900, which shifted the burden of persuasion for cases like Tarkenton's, whose underlying convictions were vacated during a habeas proceeding and dismissed on remand. Both parties agreed, as did the hearing officer, that the newly amended Penal Code Section 4900 Subdivision B and corresponding amendments applied to Mr. Tarkenton's claim, and if the Office of the Attorney General chose to object to compensation, the Office of the Attorney General bears the burden to prove by clear and convincing evidence that Mr. Tarkenton committed the acts constituting the offense. The Office of the Attorney General objected to the claim and waived further hearing, submission of additional evidence, and briefing, and submitted on the record. Claimant's counsel also waived further hearing, raising new arguments and submission of additional evidence, and submitted on the record. In accordance with California Code of Regulations, Title II, Section 619.4, Subdivision C, a schedule was established for the submission of written argument after the proposed decision was mailed to the parties. Claimant's counsel submitted written argument, which was followed by a response from the Office of the Attorney General and claimant's counsel's reply to the Office of the Attorney General. All of these materials have been provided for your review, as well as the proposed decision, which recommends denial of the claim as the Attorney General met its burden of proving by clear and convincing evidence that Mr. Tarkenton robbed the Bank of America. Throughout these proceedings, Mr. Tarkenton has been represented by Leo Terrell, along with Tony Sue from the law offices of Leo Terrell. And the Office of the Attorney General has been represented by Deputy Attorney General Dina Petroshenko and Deputy Attorney General Jessica Leal. Mr. Terrell, Mr. Sue, and Ms. Leal are in attendance today.
Thank you, counsel. We'll hear first from Mr. Terrell representing Mr. Tarkenton.
Thank you, board. My associate, Mr. Sue, will present the argument. Sorry, can you hear me? Testing, 1, 2, 3. Thank you, board, for having us here today. My associate partner, Mr. Tony Sue, will present our arguments. Thank you.
Thank you, board, for having us today. Thank you, board, for having us today. I just want to point out with the change in the law that the Attorney General did not meet their burden of proof of clear and convincing evidence that Lamont Tarkenton committed the crime. Now, what's important in this case is the Court of Appeals finding that the main detective that investigated this case was not truthful, that he exaggerated the existence of bank dye on the Talon t-shirt that was found in Lamont Tarkenton's car. I asked the court to consider the credibility of that main detective
and how he tainted the entire case, and how the Attorney General relied on evidence that the Court of Appeals already found did not connect Lamont to the crime. Therefore, I ask that the board approve this claim and do not follow the decision by the hearing officer to deny Lamont's claim. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sue. I understand that Mr. Tarkington is not in attendance.
No, he's not.
Okay, thank you. And we will move to Ms. Leal from the Attorney General's office.
Good morning. The Attorney General has already thoroughly addressed Mr. Tarkington's claim of the untruthfulness of the detective in this case, and the evidence as addressed by the Attorney General in 4 responses and in the hearing officer's proposed decision shows that clear and convincing evidence proves that Mr. Tarkington committed the robbery of the Bank of America. The Attorney General requests that the proposed decision be adopted, and I am happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Thank you, Ms. Leal. Is there any discussion on this item from the board? Seeing none, do I have a motion on item 8?
I would move to adopt the hearing officer's proposed decision in the matter.
Second.
Is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none.
Council, would you please call the roll?
The motion before the board is adoption of the hearing officer's proposed decision in the Penal Code Section 4900 matter of Lamont Tarkington. Member Becton.
Aye.
Member Silva.
Aye.
Chair Ravel.
Aye.
Motion passes.
The board will now convene into closed session under Government Code Section 11126, Subdivision C3, to discuss numbers 1 through 142 of the Victim Compensation Program.
Just remind the board members to call into the closed session and to mute and turn off your camera. Thank you.
The board is reconvening into open session under Government Code Section 1126 sub C3. Do I have a motion for numbers 1 through 142 of the Victim Compensation Program?
I would move to approve numbers 1 through 42 of the Victim Compensation Program.
Second,
Council, will you please call the roll?
Member Beckton,
aye.
Member Silva,
Aye.
Chair Ravel.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Is there any other business that needs to come before the board? Seeing and hearing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn the meeting.
I'd second.
Council, please call the roll.
Member Beckton,
Aye.
Member Silva,
Aye.
Chair Ravel.
Aye.
Motion passes.
The next meeting is scheduled to occur on September 15, 2022.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.